What makes a card perfect? I don't mean what's your perfect card. I mean, what makes a card perfect? What are your criteria? Are there criteria? Can we even begin to create a working definition for such a question? Is the question ridiculous? It might be. Does PSA tell us when a card is perfect? Does SGC or BGS or any other grading company, can they tell us when a card is perfect? And is that all we need to figure it out? If your card is centered with sharp corners and clean edges and spot on color and registration, does that mean our card is perfect? Is that all it takes? Is it even up to us? Whose opinion do we actually value on this one? Ours or someone else's? Here's another question. Have you ever passed on a card because it didn't feel perfect? And then a few minutes or a few days later or a few weeks later, you think, why in the hell did I pass on that card? Maybe we didn't realize it in the moment, but the card we didn't think was perfect turned out to actually be exactly what we wanted. Or even worse, maybe we realized we didn't need the card to be perfect in the first place. Or even worser, and here's the kicker, maybe we want our cards to be perfect, but we're incapable of even deciding what perfect means in the first place. We want perfect cards. We need perfect cards. But we don't have the first clue what perfect means, which means a lot of us, myself included, are making mistakes or second guessing ourselves, or we're not seeing the beauty that is right in front of us because we're too busy looking for the beauty that's allegedly 20 miles down the road. Welcome to the shallow end. I'm Dave Schwartz, and today we're talking about impossible standards in sports cards that lead to the kinds of decisions that make us think, what was I thinking? We're talking about clouded thinking, false judgment, hilarious expectations. And we're talking about unrealistic ambition disguised as attainable daydreams. We've all been there. We've all been there before. We'll all be there again. This hobby is built on a lot of positive things: community, nostalgia, memory, aggregation, creation. It's also built on a foundation of balsa wood that sports cards are a means to something else: financial freedom, identity, immortality, fame, and of course, perfection. Sometimes it's all too much. Sometimes we need to step back. Sometimes we need others to remind us that the only perfect that really exists is the perfect that we define for ourselves. Welcome to the shallow end. You know what phrase in this hobby I've started to roll my eyes at? Collect what you love. Collect what you love? Love? Love is a strong word. Can't I just collect what I like? Can't I collect what I just find interesting? Or maybe I don't even like it all that much, but it happens to fit into a set or a run that I'm putting together. Why do I have to collect what I love? What an impossible standard to set. Collect what you love? Okay, sure, why not? I don't know why we set these hyperbolic, unattainable markers for ourselves. But man, I'm telling you, they're getting in the way of our collections. I've been thinking a lot about this lately, about all these unwritten rules of sports cards. Like, if you can afford a PSA 10 of a card you want, instead of a PSA 9, you should get the 10, as if there's no context around that decision. Or that a card serial numbered to 50 is inherently superior to a card serial numbered to 100. Is it? Is it superior? Well, what does the card look like? What does the parallel look like? What year was it made? Who's the player? What cardboard stock did the manufacturer use? What company is it? How exclusive is the card? What is the card's place in the hobby? How badly do you want it? What does it mean if you get it, if you trade for it, if you buy it? And here's another related question. How much does it cost? I recently acquired a card from 2018 in a PSA 7, which in hobby context is basically like buying a vintage card in a PSA 3. There's a chance it looks nice, but only if you find the right copy. The card wasn't cheap, and I was second guessing myself. Did I rush into it? Should I have been more patient and saved up for a PSA 10? Or should I maybe have bought a different card? But here's the thing. I put a ton of thought into this purchase. I don't have the card in hand yet, which is why I'm being so coy about it. It's not an obscure card. It's not some random one of one. It's a card I badly wanted represented in my collection. And someday, if this player doesn't fall off a cliff, it will be one of his most collected cards. One that I will be proud to own. One that I am proud to own. Still, I was second guessing a lot. I was basically spiraling, like sports cards spiraling, not real life spiraling. And then serendipity. Serendipity in the form of a podcast episode from 2022 that I'd had in my library for a few weeks. It wasn't even a sports card podcast. It was a watch podcast. Collector's Gene Radio, hosted by Cameron Ross Steiner, and his guest was Jason Fried, a business person in the tech industry. As luck would have it, he got to talking about something I spoke of at the beginning of this episode: perfection, and how perfection, when it comes to collecting, isn't necessarily an asset. It oftentimes leads in the opposite direction. Here's Jason.
I read this somewhere, I forget where it was, but one of the worst things you can be is a connoisseur. And what I mean by that is somebody who can only appreciate the best stuff.
Or the best of the best, right?
Right, that's what I mean. Or the best of the best, where like you're disappointed because what I don't want to do is I don't want to like talk myself out of everything because there's one little tiny scratch or one little tiny nick, or the loom color is not custardy enough, or like, so, you know what I mean? You can get into this place where you're looking for that perfect specimen and you're just upset all the time, or you're frustrated or you're anxious about it. I want to be able to enjoy a broader range of things than just the best version of something.
Watches aren't sports cards. Sports cards aren't watches. I get it. But the sentiment still aligns. If there's a card you badly want for your collection and it's scarce, would you turn it down if the back left corner was scuffed? What if turning it down meant you might not get another chance at it for, who knows, like years? Okay, but that's scarcity, so perhaps it's not the best example. Let's look at it from a different point of view: the age and price of the card. Let's say the card you're thinking about getting is from the 1940s. Let's say you can afford a copy of the card, but there's a nasty gum stain on the back, or it has like 70-30 centering. is it worth paying more for 55-45 centering? How much more? Obviously, each and every person in this hobby might have a different answer to that question, but the principle remains. How much would you pay for perfection? How much would you pay for a higher degree of perfection, an idea that I recognize borders on being an oxymoron? If the card isn't perfect, will you still be able to appreciate it? And at what point are we able to accept imperfection? What's more important to you? Having any copy of that card or having the right version of the card? And if we're going to push this idea even further, at what point does the right representation of a card become the wrong representation of a card? This idea also came up on a recent YouTube episode of Cajun Cardboard, hosted by Brian Dennison. This was about a month ago, February 5th, with his guest Michael Coleman, who's Coleman Cards on Instagram. They were talking about high-end cards, such as Luka Doncic's 2018 Gold Prism out of 10. And Brian made the analogy that inspired the title of this episode. Here's Brian.
It's great because there's going to be people like me who are not willing to even get into the mix on the highest grade out there. You know what I mean? Absolutely. But there's a lot of people that want to find, it's almost like if you're moving into a neighborhood, we were talking about real estate earlier, you want the smallest house in the nicest neighborhood. That's the one you want. That's exactly what you got. You got the smallest house in the nicest, and I mean nicest neighborhood. And so more people are going to want that house than they want the biggest house in the biggest neighborhood.
What a useful way of thinking about cards, especially as scarce cards, where just landing a tolerable copy gets you benefits. It's like membership in an exclusive club, or in this case, the benefits of living in a great neighborhood. If you have the smallest house in the nicest neighborhood, you still have access to all the best schools and the best restaurants, but you don't have to pay as much on your mortgage or property taxes. Also, I think it's worth noting here that when you listen to enough content with high-end collectors and dealers, it's remarkable how many of them deliberately eschew PSA 10s. They sell PSA 10s to the masses and keep the PSA 7s, 8s, and 9s for themselves. They build their empires on the backs of those who choose to believe a PSA 10 is perfect. And that's it, isn't it? That's their secret handshake. They all know the PSA 10 isn't perfect. It's a mirage. It's a trophy for those compelled to achieve. Or it's a target for status seekers. Or probably, if we're being fair and honest, it's just been shoved down our throats so many times. This alleged mystical value of the PSA 10, the perfect 10. It's something we don't even think about. It's tautological. We want it because we want it. Who does a PSA 10 really benefit? A PSA 10 doesn't benefit the person who owns it. It only benefits the person who sells it. When you own it, when you own a PSA 10, it's just another card that looks nice in its plastic slab. It means nothing. It literally means nothing. It has no benefit, none, zero. You don't reap the rewards of owning a PSA 10 or BGS 10 or any other 10 until you sell it. At which point, obviously, you don't own it anymore. You don't own a PSA 10 to own a PSA 10. You own a PSA 10 to get rid of it. Many high-end collectors and dealers know this. It's their secret, hidden in plain sight. This July, at the National, they will sell scarce PSA 10s and dine at steakhouses And many of us, myself included, will buy those PSA 10s and complain about the prices of our chicken tenders. So, what's the path forward? Smallest house in the best neighborhood. All the benefits, but only a fraction of the financial strain. I think it's only fair to pause for a second and acknowledge that it's possible I only feel this way to make myself feel better about my incoming PSA 7. It truly might just be a coping mechanism. And it's possible that if I had bought a PSA 10 instead of a PSA 7, I'd be doing an episode right now about the value of PSA 10s instead of lower value cards. I have to acknowledge that possibility. Maybe. It's hard to know for sure. But what I do know, or maybe I just suspect, since knowing might not be possible, is that it's crucial we ask ourselves these questions before making significant trades or purchases. Is this card perfect? Does it need to be perfect? And if so, what does perfect even mean? The answer, I think, is this. Cards really don't need to be perfect. But if we want them to be, it's up to each of us, individually for ourselves and only ourselves, to determine our own definitions of what perfect is. Because if we let others define perfect for us, perfection will be unattainable and it will drive us mad. And here's the final idea as we get to the end of this discussion. With some cards, aren't their imperfections sometimes what we love about them? Isn't what makes a card less than perfect the very thing that sometimes makes it perfect to us? Thanks for listening to The Shallow End. I'll talk with you again next time, whenever that may be.